Hey guys, LMAO here. In today's guide, you'll learn how to play the Gates deck in Magic the Gathering Arena. I have played over 130 games with this deck, refining it along the way. My current version is at a 67% win rate over 40 games. So I'm going to walk you guys through my card choices and teach you how to play it. First, let's talk land. I'm running 27 land in this deck. 19 of them are gates, and then we have 8 additional land that are not gates. For the gates, we have 3 copies of Azorius Guildgate, 4 copies of Izzet Guildgate, another 4 copies of Gruul Guildgate, 2 copies of Selesnya Guildgate, 4 copies of Simic Guildgate, and 2 Gateway Plazas. The other 8 lands consist of 1 Breeding Pool, 1 Forest, 2 Stomping Ground, and 4 Plaza of Harmony. We're playing a lot of gates, and the purpose of these other lands is so that we can play things on the turns we want to play them. We don't want to be playing a tap land every turn. So that's why we have 3 shock lands. We're playing 1 forest so that we can pull a basic land against cards like Settle the Wreckage. We're also running 4 copies of Plaza of Harmony. While they may not be gates themselves, they have gate synergy and provide much needed healing against aggressive strategies like mono red. Now that we got the land out of the way, let's dig into the meat. We're running 4 copies of Growth Spiral. Growth Spiral is one of the early cards that we get to use in order to ramp ourselves up to the bigger threats throughout the deck. In addition, it can just be cycle late game if we need it. It also synergizes pretty well with a card like Guild Summit to allow us to get additional draws in a turn. Our second ramp spell is Circuitous Route. The route provides early game ramp, but it's not dead in the late game. Once you get into the later stages of the game, it's going to give you additional draws through Guild Summit, in addition to thinning out your deck so your draws are more meaningful. We're also running 6 sweepers in the deck. There's a lot of aggro running around, so 6 is the right number in my opinion. We're running 4 copies of Gates Ablaze, which in my opinion is one of the best sweepers in the game. Gates Ablaze scales as the game goes on, allowing you to wipe out bigger and bigger creatures, and it's useful for both the aggressive matchup as well as a mid-range matchup. To supplement our Gates Ablaze, we're running 2 copies of Deafening Clarion. This is going to provide an early sweeper against a deck like Mono Red, in addition to giving our big boys lifelink to swing the game. To round out our anti-aggro tech, we're also running 1 copy of Archway Angel. I was really torn between running only 1 or 2 copies of Archway Angel. When you play it against an aggressive deck, it tends to win you the game on the spot. But frequently, in other matchups, it ends up just being a dead card. That's why we're running only 1 copy. We have 11 threats in the deck. The first up is Gatebreaker Ram. We're running 4 copies of this bad boy. Genuinely, I would probably run 6 to 8 if I could. Gatebreaker Ram comes down as soon as turn 3, and scales from there. It makes an excellent attacker and blocker because it has Vigilance. In addition to that, Gatebreaker Ram has excellent synergy with Gates Ablaze. Because of the inherent way Gatebreaker Ram and Gates Ablaze scale depending on how many gates you have, it will never die to Gates Ablaze. This allows you to wipe the board with Gates Ablaze and immediately attack your opponent's face in the same turn. To supplement our Gatebreaker Rams, we also have Gate Colossus. It's not uncommon for you to get a Gate Colossus out as soon as turn 5. Gate Colossus can't be chump blocked by small minions, but its real value comes in its ability to recur itself. Unless Gate Colossus is exiled, anytime you drop a gate, you'll be given the option to put Gate Colossus on the top of your library. This has special synergy with Guild Summit, since when you have a Guild Summit on board and you drop a gate, both the Gate Colossus trigger and the Guild Summit trigger will happen at the same time. If you order it correctly, you'll be able to put the Gate Colossus on top of your library first before you draw a card from Guild Summit. This allows you to constantly slam Gate Colossus almost every turn. There's not a lot I really need to say about this. Most of you probably know how good it is. Hydroid Crisis is flexible, giving you draw, heal, and it scales very well, especially since we're a ramp deck. Now let's talk about Guild Summit. This card is essentially straight up broken. It's a card you're going to want to hold, especially against aggressive strategies, and not play until much later in the game. But once you play it, you're going to be able to tap down as many gates as you'd like and draw a card for each one of them. It's not uncommon for you to end up drawing 8, 10, 12 cards if you want to in the late game. In fact, Guild Summit is such a great card draw engine that you need to be careful about drawing too many cards and decking yourself. We have 3 slots left in the deck, and to me, these have been kind of my flex slots. I change them depending on what I'm running into in the meta. Right now, it is currently occupied by 2 copies of Expansion Explosion and 1 copy of Rhythm of the Wild. With Expansion Explosion, you get an enormous amount of versatility. Against red, I find myself copying burn spells to destroy their own minions. Against tempo blue or control decks, I find myself copying counter spells in order to resolve a minion. They can be used to copy your own spells, such as Circuitous Route. In the late game, it can just be used as straight burn to end the game, or, in some cases, you can even use it to mill your opponent. Rhythm of the Wild is another card I've added to help me in long games. Rhythm of the Wild gives us options in the late game when we just need to kill our opponent from hand. When you have an opportunity, you play the Rhythm of the Wild, hope it resolves, and then you play any number of big minions and send them to the face. I've won many games this way, so I highly recommend this card, even though it's still in testing. Let's talk sideboard now. In the sideboard, we're running 2 copies of Crushing Canopy. This is to help us deal with the various threats in mono blue, in Drakes, or just to deal with pesky enchantments such as Wilderness Reclamation. We're running 2 additional copies of Archway Angel. As I said before, this card is insane against the aggressive matchup, and all you really need to do is resolve 1 to essentially win the game on the spot. We're running 1 copy of Carnage Tyrant. This is obviously to tech in against a control matchup, although I'm not entirely satisfied with only 1 copy. I've been kind of iffy on whether to bring this up to 2 or 3 copies in the sideboard. We're also running 1 copy of Niv. This is again to potentially help us out in the control matchup a little bit, even though it's not nearly as good as Carnage Tyrant. The main reason we're running Niv is to counter mono blue. Niv is kind of the Archway Angel of tempo blue. You only need 1, and once you resolve it, you pretty much win the game on the spot. So that's why I only have 1 copy in the sideboard, although I could see making a case for 2. We also have the 4th copy of Gate Colossus in the sideboard, which is to help us have threats against the control matchup. We also have 3 copies of Syncopate in the sideboard. This is a counterspell that provides unlimited scalability and exiles whatever it counters. This is useful in various matchups for dealing with planeswalkers or things like phoenixes that you may want to get exiled. We also have 3 copies of Banefire, which is both for the control and aggro matchups. 3 Banefires gives us an additional win condition against control matchups, as well as just being a cheaper burn spell in the aggressive matchup. The last things we have are 2 copies of Mass Manipulation. I've been really torn on whether I should be running one of these copies in the main deck versus the sideboard, because it's so good in the mid-range matchup. Gates has a very difficult time dealing with planeswalkers, so Mass Manipulation is a great way to swing a board state in your favor. This deck has been working wonders for me in ranked, and I'm sure it will for you too. Did you learn something from this video? If so, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on the subscribe button in the bottom right corner of this video. Also, if you want to catch me when I'm live, head over to twitch.tv/LMAO and drop me a follow. Now I want to turn it over to you. What would you do to improve this deck? Would you run a main deck Mass Manipulation to help you deal with planeswalkers? Or perhaps I should be running Open the Gates to filter through my deck faster and ensure I get the colors I need. Either way, let me know by leaving a comment down below right now.